Today I'm going to talk to you about acrylic paint skins and acrylic paint shapes. Now these are things that I make. I'm not going to share with you how I make them because I sell them and it's a business for me, but I am going to show you what people use them for and how they use them. So these are just some examples of acrylic paint skins, and they are used in resin projects. You can also use them in other craft projects, but primarily they are amazing in resin projects. So if you zoom in, you can see that they have a sort of unique patternation on each one. You'll never ever be able to replicate any of these skins in their entirety. And some of them come with a nice colour on the back, and others are just plain black or white or blue or whatever on the back. So these are just, as I say, examples of some acrylic skins that I have created. This one's obviously been used. So that gives you an idea of an acrylic paint skin. Some of them are durable to, be a little bit aggressive with, and others are a little bit thinner and won't take as much of a beating as some of the thicker ones. And then from these skins, I cut shapes, and I cut shapes from the tiniest of tiniest little dolphins, for example, like so, to pretty dragonflies, and then to even huge shapes, like this beautiful princess. So you can see in this one that she's got lots of metallics in her, and she's a sort of bluey silvery on the back. So these are acrylic skin shapes, acrylic paint shapes, and these are the skins. And I will put at the end of this just a few photos on a little slideshow, just so you can see a few of the other shapes and skins that have been made. They're not necessarily ones that are currently available. They're ones that perhaps have been made in the past. And then what I'll do is I'll clear this space up, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how to make a piece of jewellery out of one of the acrylic skins, and how to place in resin one of the shapes. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I'm back, and I'm going to just quickly share with you my essentials when it comes to doing anything with the acrylic skins. The first one is a pair of curved scissors. Excuse the mess of them. I use them a lot and they get covered in paint, but they're still absolutely fine to use. And they're lovely to work with when you're working with curved areas. So definitely invest in a pair of curved scissors in better condition than mine are currently in. Have a little wet wipe to hand, or some tissue, but I prefer wet wipes. Have a little pointer thing. I have this lovely little silicone one, and that's going to help me move the resin around, because wood can, if you're using toothpicks or wooden things, that can actually cause bubbles. Have some damming tape, which basically you can use to seal the backs of open bezels like this one. And then you can either choose to use normal resin, which means that you're going to be doing this longer because you're going to have to set the layers, let them dry, etc. Or you can use UV resin. Currently on this one I'm using Vista Lumin. I do quite like this one, but UV resin obviously can unfortunately go yellow quicker than normal resin because it is put under quite a high UV lamp. And then a UV lamp, which I have over here, if you're using UV resin. If you're not using UV resin, obviously you don't need the lamp, because that is only for UV resin. So what I've done already off screen, because I don't want you to be bored watching me try and cut too many things, I've already pre-cut some circles. I've got a large circle and I've got two small circles, one of which I've already encased in the closed back bezel earring, and the other earring is there, ready to have it put in. And the other one I'm going to place in an open backed bezel. So this is the acrylic skin I'm going to use in the open backed one. So it's got a lovely little splash of gold in there, some blues and greens and teals. And then these are the skins I'm going to use for the little earrings. So to cut out the acrylic skin, I tend to get my bezel, I place it where I want it, and then I will draw around it or use a, what are they called? Not Stanley knives, you know what I mean. Scalpel, there we go. Get a scalpel and cut round it. My advice is always cut a little bit bigger than you think you need, because you don't want it to be too small. The problem with it being too small is when you hold up your bezel to the light, if your acrylic skin doesn't quite go to the edges, you're just going to see light through it. So cut a little bit bigger than you need and get it into your shape. With these ones, what you can do is you can press them down onto your acrylic paint skin, and it leaves an indent which vanishes very quickly. I don't know if you're going to see that. I can just make it out in this light. Let me try that again. So push it really hard, get the imprint on the skin, and then there you can see it. Then you can cut around it. So that's with these really sharp edges of these closed bezels, that's really the best way of cutting these. These ones, like I say, draw around it, and then using your curved scissors, just cut it. So that's what I've done with these two. Now on this, let's start with this one. This one's quite simple because in theory, if you've cut it to the right size, you should be able to pop that in there and push it down and it would fit. Now what I've done on this is I've purposely made it too big to show you how I tidy up two bigger ones. So I'm going to have it coming down this way. Am I happy with that? Yes, I think I am. I'm going to push it in at this bottom bit here so that it only overlaps around these top sections and that it's perfectly in the bottom there. So that's my guide point. I'm going to push it in. And as you can see, it's nicely overlapping. And then I'm going to get my curved scissors and I'm going to cut around like so. I'm only then cutting the stuff that is proud, that is sticking up. I'm not then cutting the pieces that I don't want to cut. Now, I have chosen a particularly awkward pendant because it's got this extra little bit, so I've got to make sure and get round there. Now because some of it's going to go up the wall of the pendant, it doesn't really matter if it's not a perfect cut because it's going to get a little bit hidden. Because you see now, I'm going to push it in some more, and then I'm going to really work it in there with my nail. If you don't have any nails, I can't help you with that, sorry. I'm just pushing that in there, so that has gone in really lovely. No lumps, no bumps. It's nice and flat on the bottom, and that's what I did with this one. I will give it another quick going over. So pushing it round and making sure it's exactly where I want it. Now actually look, there's a little bit there that I can cut. It's a bit too proud. Let me do something with that. Better? That's better. It's worth taking the time to get them in properly because you don't want them floating up or having gaps or anything. So do take your time with them. As I say, cut larger than you need to start with and work it out once you've got it in there. So really on this one, if you are going to use normal resin, at this point, you could literally just put the normal resin in there. I do recommend a shallow layer first. So, you know, this could be done over maybe 2 days. A shallow layer and then a doming layer afterwards. Just because you don't want any overspill. You don't want it, you know, if you it's only a very small bezel here. So, you know, you could easily overfill that. I do recommend doing it in 2 goes, but you'll become an expert and you'll know what you like to do. When you are using UV resin, what we'll do in a second is we will just pop a very shallow layer on there, put it under the lamp. I'll speed all those bits up because you don't need to, you know, you're not going to want to see me do those bits. So we'll just pop a little layer in each under the lamp, let it cure for a couple of minutes, back out another layer under the lamp, and then a doming layer. So my first layer really is to seal. That's my intention. But again, you can try and do it in larger layers if you want to, but that's how I do it. With these ones, it's a little bit different because there's nothing to stick this to. I mean, you pour resin through that, it's just going to vanish everywhere. So you have 2 options. What you could have done is you could have cut this much bigger. You could have placed this over. You could have pressed it down really, really hard and then poured some resin and really hoped that it didn't leak out too much. So sort of keeping your fingers crossed and hoping. But what I like to do is take some of this damming tape and cut some out. I don't usually use these scissors for this, but that's what I've got to hand. Pop it down like so. And then get your bezel, push it firmly down, and now you've created yourself a back. So much like this one, you've kind of created the back. And also what this does is, because this is sticky, it's actually going to help us keep this down. But because it's sticky, once we've put it down, we've put it down. Does that make sense? So we really want to be happy with our angle. So place it over the tape. Really work out where you want your patination to be, whether you want it up, down, left, right, whatever. I quite like the idea of what do I like the idea of? What? I think I quite like the idea of that. So, oh, it's very sticky. Oh, fiddly and sticky, especially with gloves on. Right, I'm going to put that down in there. Now, try and get near the centre. Put it down. If you're not happy, move it around, but remember it's on sticky tape. I'm just going to take my gloves off for a second because I put them on because I'd be using resin in a minute, but they're annoying me, so sorry about this, everyone. I'm having problems. At least you can see now how fiddly this is. The reason I did that was because there was a gap down here and I didn't want there to be a gap down here. And that's the problem with using the sellotape, the damming tape, is that it does get sticky. That feels a bit better. And I'm just going to push that down. Now what you can do is you can hold that up to a light, like a normal natural light, and it will show you whether or not there's any gaps. There is a gap, but I'll fix that later. I will show you at the end how I'm going to fix that. So I push that down. Now again, ooh, it's so sticky. What I should have done is also put a little bit of this tape down to stick it down while I was doing all that work. and that would have made my job a whole lot easier. That's the card I'm going to put it on to put it into the lamp. I should have done that. There we go. Now, wouldn't that have been a much easier thing for me to have done and shown you at the beginning? So hopefully you've seen that. So now what you can do if you're using normal resin is you could pour your setting layer in there and then come back the next day or whenever and then do your doming layer. I'm going to use UV resin on all of these. So what I'll do is I will put one shallow layer in there, cure it for a couple of minutes, and then I will do another layer, cure it, and then I will do its final layer. So you'll be able to watch that sped up in a minute. I'm going to do that right now. While we're waiting for the earrings and the necklace that we've just made to fully set, I've just put them in the sun just for a couple of minutes just to get rid of that sticky top layer. I've heard you can also put them in water and then cure them with a UV lamp to get that sticky layer off. I've not tried that myself. I thought I would just show you how to use the shapes. So, for example, if you wanted to use one of the shapes to make a necklace, you could pour your resin into the bezel, into the mold, sorry, like this one. And if you're using normal resin, I would recommend just letting just one small layer and then letting that set and then placing your shape in. If you're using UV resin, exactly the same, one small layer, let it cure and then put your shape in. And depending on whether you want your shape to be that way when it's on the front or that way when it's on the front will determine whether or not you place it face down or whether you place it face up, or what you consider to be face down or face up might not even be what everyone else does. So it is literally a case of just having your cured layer. Let's pretend this is a cured layer in there. Putting your cured layer in there, just popping that down and then doing a sealing layer. And again, I really do stress doing very shallow layers to hold the acrylic skin down. If you put too much resin in, this may start to float and then you might not get the effect that you want. It might move, it could come to the top, all sorts of things. And you also can reduce the bubbles by doing the smaller layers. Once you've got the next layer cured, then by all means, fill it up, go for it. What you can do is you could put a background colour in. So for example, you could mix some glitters up with your resin and pour that in, let that set, and then put your shape on top. If you're wanting to use the skin shapes in something a bit bigger, let's say something like this, you can get your skin shape, which in this case is a beautiful peacock. Choose which side you want to show. Now, most molds are reverse, so think that you want to see the back, because when it comes out, you want the front to be on the front. So if, for example, I want that to be on the front, when I'm pouring, I want to be seeing the back. Now, sometimes you might find molds that are face up, and in which case you're doing the opposite. What you see is what you want to get. But in most cases, molds are face down. So you would put your peacock where you wanted it, and then you would be able to pour. Now, do you have to do a layer first? The answer to that really is no. But when you, so for example, you could, this is fresh, there's no resin in this one. I could put that there. It sticks lovely on the silicone. It's not coming off. I could pour a layer of resin in there. Obviously, I'm not going to use UV resin for something this big. I could pour a layer of resin, and then when I demold it, I'm probably going to find that some of the acrylic skin hasn't quite been penetrated by the resin, and I'm probably going to have to do a top coat. So it's up to you really whether or not you chance it and just pop it in, pour the resin and see if you need to do a top coat afterwards, but I think you will in most cases need to do a top coat, because just some of the thicker sections, the resin just won't soak through, and you might end up touching it and going, ah, I can actually feel the acrylic skin there. So you'd want to protect it by doing another layer, but you can give that a go. Actually, I'm looking at this now and I'm thinking, I think I might do that one. That looks really gorgeous. I'm going to leave that there. And then the other option, if you want to actually make a pot, for example, out of the acrylic skin, it really is just a case of cutting it to size, which I haven't done in this case because I'm just showing you, and popping the skin in. As I say, cut it to size, put it all the way round. If I had a, what size is that? Even that's not the right size, but if you had a large or long thin acrylic skin, you can just pop it in like so. Pour a sealing layer, and I say it again just purely because you don't want to just fill this up with resin, because A, you're going to get bubbles, and B, the acrylic might just float up. So just do a very shallow little layer in there at the bottom, or do the layer first, actually might be good, so it's still wet when you put this in, rather than pouring resin over it, because that might be a bit awkward. Do a little layer of clear resin, pop that in to sit and set, and then once it's set, you can then just fill the rest of it up. And when you take that pot out, it would have, in theory, it would kind of have that design on it, which would make it an absolutely unique pot. So yeah, that's the different ways of using the shapes and the skins. So I'll just go and grab the jewellery that we've just made and show it to you. Here we go. So this is now the finished pair of earrings, which I'm just going to take off of there. They've lost their tacky surface because they've been outside in the sun. So we have now got a really pretty pair of earrings. Look at them. Aren't they gorgeous? I'll take better photos of those and show them at the end. And then for this one, when we take the base off, the tape off, sorry, we might find that actually we need to do something on the back, because it might not have gone all the way through. But in this case, it has gone all the way through. Now I noticed that there was ever so such a slight gap just there. When I held it up to the light, I could just see through it. So I'm going to actually put a back coat of colour on here. I'm going to do it with nail polish and then a layer of UV resin. And that way I'm not using UV resin in colour, or colour in UV resin, and because a coloured UV resin is quite hard to cure, whereas if I just do a blue nail polish, and then I can just do a clear layer of nail varnish. So I'm going to do that and show you. Okay, so I'm going to use this nail polish. It's a gel, oh, it's a gel nail polish, and it doesn't want to open. And it's just simply a case of just putting it on the back. Oh, it's awful, isn't it? But I love that smell. I love the smell of nail polish. I'm sure all the people that do nails out there is saying to me, do it right, you're not doing it right. I've probably put too thick a layer on for nails, for gel. Probably won't cure now. It doesn't matter if I get it on the bezel itself, because I can wipe it off. But I want to make sure it's covered all the way to the edge, because otherwise you're going to be able to see through it. I'm just being a bit of a perfectionist. I probably don't need to do this layer, this level, but I am. And then I'm just going to go around the edge and just make sure that I've not got any on the metal. Like so. Not that it matters again because it's the back, but I like it to look as neat as possible. There we go. So I will let that cure under the lamp. I could have just used normal nail varnish. I'll let that cure under the lamp, and then when that's cured, I will pop a layer of UV resin on the back. Just going to put that little layer on there. This doesn't need to be a deep layer because it is literally just a coating layer. I think adding a back in sometimes makes it look a bit neater as well and professional, because sometimes the back of an acrylic skin doesn't look as attractive as the front, especially if it's one that's got lots of black or white in, because they sink and so they predominantly take over the whole of the back. So by this way you can control the back of the bezel as well. That'll do. So I'll pop that under the lamp and show you that when it's ready. I'm back and this has now set. The back is just a plain blue and the front has now got the acrylic skin in there, and it's nicely domed, as you can see. It's slightly proud of the bezel. That's how I like to finish mine off. And then I'm going to use a little pinch ball here to pop in there. Oop, and I should be able to just push that closed, and then with my pliers I'll just give it a little help just to make sure it is really closed in there nicely. There we go. And then I'm just going to put a little black cord necklace on it, because I don't tend to waste money on precious metal chains, because I feel that customers have usually got a spare silver necklace at home, and gold is too expensive really, isn't it? So there we go. I hope you enjoyed watching that, and as I said, I'll pop some little photos at the end.